Here we're on the front of our Grand Design Reflection. We're going to do a technical walkthrough like you would get on data delivery to go over the operation of these components on here. Your unit may differ with the type or brand of component that's in here. If so, you can find a deeper dive on these components as well as others in our helpful hacks section on the Great American RV YouTube channel. We're going to start in the front. Up here we have our 7-way plug. 7-way plug is going to transfer all of our turn signals, our lights, all that stuff to our trailer. It's also going to have a battery charge line on here that'll pull off the alternator of your vehicle to charge that battery while you're traveling down the road. We'll also have our brake control wire that pulls off of that brake controller. Whenever you activate your brakes, it will send a signal and activate the brakes on the trailer. Speaking of brakes, we do have this breakaway cable right here. This latch should latch in the same hole on your receiver hitch that you put your safety chains on. Reason being is if anything fails with the hitch, we want this cable to go with the towing vehicle and pull that pin out of that box. That will activate the brakes on the trailer and bring it to a stop if something were to ever happen. Now, in order for that to happen, we need a solid 12-volt battery. If we don't have a good battery in there that's operational, then there will be no power to emit that safety system. We also need to make sure that that pin is always inserted in that box. Otherwise, those brakes will be locked up and activated all the time, and we don't want that. We also have our 12-volt power jack here in the front. There is a red wire that flows down to our battery system with an inline fuse on it. In the event this jack isn't working, we want to check that fuse, also check the status of our battery, make sure we have enough juice in there. If not, plug that 7-way in, that can help, and you can operate this jack. In the event you can't figure it out, you have a black plug on the top, pull that plug off, stick a crank handle in there, and manually operate that jack to get it up or down, get you out of a jam. Behind that, we have our dual propane tanks. Our dual propane tanks have a regulator on there. It's a dual propane tank regulator. You'll see a little lever on there. We can choose which tank we want to be our primary tank. Having both tanks on, one of the tanks selected as primary, when you use your propane, if that primary tank runs dry, it will automatically swap over to that secondary tank, and it will leave an indicator saying red to let you know that that primary tank is empty. From there, we could swap over to that secondary tank, have that previous primary tank refilled or changed out. Behind that, we do have our storage center for our battery for the unit. On the driver's side, we have access to our pass-through bay right here. We're gonna have our Furrion solar controller as well as our leveling system for our jacks, our battery disconnect and our solar disconnect, as well as an LCI tire link system for our tire system if we wanna monitor our tires while we're driving down the road. That system is already installed on here with the sensors. We'll go over some more information on the other items as well as our control center right here. So we can see here we have our LCI electronic leveling system for our travel trailer here. We'll run through the functions on here. First, we'll just run off of, if we just got to the campsite, we've pulled the unit off of our ton jack. We want to go into auto level. You can just hit auto level right off the back and those jacks will come down and level out your unit. From there, if we are ready to go ahead and head home, we can hit our arrow down and go to auto hitch height, and it wouldn't say unavailable here. It would just say available. You would hit enter, and then those jacks are going to raise up and your tongue jack is going to go back in the same position it was in whenever you detached it from your truck, so no more guessing games there. So after we have our truck backed up to the hitch, we can come in here to auto retract rear, which is the third option on here. We want to hit enter and it will retract those rear jacks. You can do that, or you can retract all of them. Either way, that's an option as well. And then just use the tongue jack to go ahead and set the ball on the ground. You always want to make sure all your jacks are retracted before you hit the road. Manual level is if we want to tweak it a little bit. We've gone through auto level and our system, maybe our door is still kind of closing up on us or something's just not quite right. This thing is only going to get it so much in level. So if we've got to make some minor adjustments, we would go into this manual mode right here. We would hit enter. We can see our degree marks right here. So as we adjust our levelness, either from the front, the rear, the right, or left, we'll see our degree marks change. And the objective, of course, is to get 0. More than likely, if we're in auto level, we have 0 already there, and we're just trying to make a little tweak. You would just tweak it with your front, left, right, rear, however you would like to do it. Also in manual mode, we can go ahead and do an auto retract, which would retract everything in there. If we scroll down one more time, we can see left front, right front, and rear, right rear. So what you're seeing right here is the stroke of the jacks and how far out there they are, how extended they are. Now, if your pad that you're setting up at is extremely unlevel, you may have to get some blocks for it, because eventually this system will stroke out because it's only going to go out so far. Another option on here, if you are in that manual mode, I forgot to mention, is this retract. If you need to retract the jacks a little bit, hold down that button till it lights up, and then just hit your jack, front, right, rear, left, whatever, and it will actually retract those jacks. That's pretty much it in that system. We can hit enter to exit that. Whenever your system first turns on, this would be the screen that you have. You're going to have your voltage on there. Now, you do need a really good 12-volt system on here. If you don't have a good battery and you're not charging it whenever you run this system, it is likely you're going to have some faults in here. So keep that in mind. On our control center, we have our satellite cable and auxiliary ports for our coax connections. If we have outdoor satellite, we can hook that up. Park cable, we hook that up there, and if we have a third connection we'd like to run through all our TVs, we can hook that up right there. We have our quick connect right here for our blue coiled hose. We can hook up a spray port there. This coax port on the side here runs directly to our outside TV, that we can go ahead and hook whatever we want directly to that as well. We have a switch over here for our front cap lights and our slide lights. And we have another switch up in the top right corner, kind of hard to see. That is our water pump. That 12-volt water pump will pull from our onboard water storage, and it will supply water to our faucets on the inside in the event that we have actual water in that tank. We'll talk about how to fill that in a second. Our other option is our city water connection. Our city water connection is right here. This is where we would hook that water hose up. If we have a bib at the campground, we can hook that water hose up, turn it on. That will supply water to our fixtures. So if you didn't have that, you want to fill your fresh tank and use that water pump. Right here we have the combination of all the different options for how our water can go out into our unit. So we have our dry camping. So this would be if we have already filled our tank, we would go ahead and turn it to here. We turn that water pump on and it will pull from that tank. Next one is our power fill tank. We would have it in this option here to be able to fill that tank through that city water connection there. Now that onboard storage, once you add water to it, that does add more weight to our unit. If we don't want it, there is a valve underneath that we can go ahead and pull that and drain that water out. We don't want any more than what we need because of the added extra weight, and we don't want to leave it in there too long because that water will become stagnant over time. If we have a city water connection at the campsite, we can go ahead and hook that hose up right here, turn it to this configuration, and then we have our city water directly out to all of our stuff. Winterization option would pull from right here into our unit, and that end of that hose would need to go into a bottle of RV antifreeze. This is to be able to winterize your unit. There are more steps to this process. You can find that in your owner's manual or in our video on HAP's Helpful Hacks. Our last one is siphon sanitize to tank, which would be this configuration here. That is to sanitize that onboard water storage tank. You could do a mixture of bleach and water into that tank to go ahead and sanitize it and clean it out. Our next option over here is our black tank flush. That is to go ahead and flush out that sewage system out of our black tank. We would hook that up. We'll talk a little more about that when we get to our tank system. We do have a gray tank valve right here for that secondary gray tank outlet over here. Once again, we will go over the gray and black tanks when we get to those outlets. And we have a GFCI protected outlet right here on the side. In here, we're also going to have our battery disconnect in this box right here. You'll find a lot of resettable fuses and stuff. Most of these are temperature controlled, so they'll automatically reset after they cool off if something's tripping. But it's an on-off switch. We go ahead and just turn it off. It disconnects our battery power from the rest of our unit. We use that whenever we store our unit unplugged, so we can conserve the amount of power in that battery, that when we come back out to it to hook up, we have battery power. So when we are plugged in, using it or storing it, we want to leave that switch on so our battery actually gets charged while it's plugged in. You'll notice another switch right here, off and on. That is our solar disconnect. Completely different from our battery disconnect. It will shut off all of our solar system, including this Furrion controller right here. So it eliminates it from the system. If you want to go ahead and run your solar while your unit is parked, either unplugged or plugged in, go ahead and do it. This disconnect right here will not prohibit the solar from charging. So you can turn this off, that solar will still connect to that battery system and still charge. We talked about our leveling system on this unit. The front ones look like these stabilizer jacks, but these are actually levelers. They're a heavier duty system. We can pull a plug on both sides and in there insert a crank handle that comes with your unit to override those jacks in the event that you can't get them up. In order to do that, we want to unplug the 12 volts off of that system. Then we insert that crank handle in order to operate. Our jacks are a little bit different in the rear. We'll talk about those here shortly. Below our front pass-through bay, you'll see that red and blue line right there. Those are our low point drains when we want to drain the water out of our system and prep it for winterization. You can find more information on that in your owner's manual or one of our videos on helpful hacks. Moving down the line, we have our front slide out. That is going to be a 12 volt operated slide out, as well as our rear. Our front one's a slim rack system. We have videos on the controls for that. We also have our rack and pinion slide behind me. That's a different type of slide out as well. The motor and everything is under the underbelly. There is an override for that on the other side, little hole in the J-wrap. You stick your crank handle in there and you can manually operate that slide out. We'll show you where that is a little bit later. In the meantime, we have our black and gray tank station right here with our dump station right here where we'll hook up our hose. We'll see a spot where we can store our hose here, our handles for our system. We do have another gray tank handle there in that front storage bay that we saw, and this is where our outlet is. So let's talk about our different types of tanks. Gray tanks and black tanks. Gray tank is your shower water, your sink water, all that kind of stuff going into that tank. Pretty clean water, right? If we have our hookup there at the site, we can leave those valves open all the time so we don't have to keep going and dumping them after showers and stuff when they fill up. Our black tank, however, is our sewage. Everything we put down the toilet is going in that black tank system. So it means we have some solids in there. If we leave that valve open, those solids aren't going to have any water. They're going to end up drying up. You're going to have dry tank. We don't want that. So make sure you leave that valve closed all the time until you're ready to dump. When you're ready to dump, have your hose hooked up. Come pull that black tank handle. You'll want to hook up your black tank flush hose. Turn that on and that will help flush that tank out. You'll have water flowing from a jet on the opposite side, and that's going to help push any debris out of that tank over to our valve here and clean out that tank. Once you're satisfied with flushing out your system, you'll turn off your black tank flush, disconnect the hose, come over here, close that black tank valve, then go on the inside and hold that pedal down and add several gallons of good clean water into your system. This will help knock any debris that might be stuck to the wall or anything like that out of there, and also help those items from solidifying in there. We also want to drop our chemicals in there too. That will help degrade whatever is left in that system. We have a great video on how to flush your black tank. This is how the owner manual suggests it. We have some pro tips on how to do that in our video on Hap's Helpful Hacks. We're going to notice our rear leveler right here. We can override that one by pulling that black plug out right there, disconnecting our 12 volts from it, putting a socket in there attached to a drill, and we can automatically retract that system with the drill in the event we need to. On the rear of our unit, of course, we are pre-wired for a Furrion backup camera system. A few screws, a little plug in, we can install that camera system, and it will power up off of our running lights on our unit. And when we kick those on, that camera will kick on. We can see behind us while we're traveling or while we are backing up. We also have a receiver hitch down here at the bottom. You're not going to notice any lights or tow hooks for it. That is not intended to pull a trailer, boat, golf cart, anything else behind you. It's for a bike rack, luggage rack, anything of that nature that you put in that receiver hitch to add extra storage ability. We also have our 50 amp twist lock plug right here. We put it in there, turn it to the right to lock it in. We have a retainer ring on there. Want to tighten up that retainer ring. That way kids can't accidentally pull it out, no tripping, all that stuff over the cords when they're running around, because it can happen. We also want to make sure that we plug this in first and then plug it into our shore power. That way we can reduce any arcing on this plug here, as well as have our AC system off so we can reduce any surges to that system whenever we plug it in or unplug it. We also have our factory supplied ladder right here to gain access to our roof. Why do we need to gain access to our roof? Well, the most important reason of all is maintenance. We need to check the sealant on that roof. We also need to check the sealant around our windows, our trim, our lights, all that stuff. every 60 to 90 days. Every 60 to 90 days, check the sealant, looking for decay, looking for peeling, looking for cracking, looking for ability for water to make entry into your unit, and we don't want that to happen. Manufacturers require in your owner's manual to check that sealant every 60 to 90 days. If we don't, you're going to have issues with your camper. I don't care if it's under a cover or not. Make sure you are checking that sealant. Otherwise, you're going to have some major problems, and you're going to regret not having maintained that sealant. So make sure we're checking it. You also want to get up there, clean that roof at least twice a year. And we also want to check that rubber after trips to make sure we don't have any low-lying tree limbs scrape or poke any holes in that rubber, causing water entry as well. Make sure we're maintaining that properly. Not much to go over on the passenger side, more access to our pass-through bay right there. We do have another override for that leveling system. Once again, that black plug can pull out and you can manually operate that side. We have motors on each side for the front and the rear jacks. As we move down the line, we have our awning and our awning lights, both 12-volt powered. If we have any issues with these, we want to go to the fuse panel that has all our 12-volt fuses. We'll show you where that is with the breaker panel on the inside. Let's talk about our awning. It's a sunshade, really. It is not intended to shield you from the rain, storms, so on and so forth. So you got rain, go ahead and roll it in. You got a bad windstorm, anything of that nature, roll it in. And if you're leaving your camper for an extended period of time, roll it in. You don't want the insurance claim. This thing can come down or blow off in the event you leave it out. So make sure we're being cautious. We don't end up having any extra damage to our unit due to leaving it out in those kind of circumstances. It will be an insurance claim. It's a pricey repair. You don't want to have to deal with that. We are going to have a little light rain on there. I understand that. We're going to have dew on there. We're going to have condensation for our AC get up on there too. Main thing is we don't want that water to puddle in the middle of our awning, allowing it to collapse. So what we had to do is either tilt it to the front or the back. You don't do both. You only do one of them. These arms work the same on both sides, so you can choose which one you want to do. Very simple. Grab the middle of this bar right here and just pull down, and now that awning will drain the water off on this end. When we're ready to roll that awning in, all we got to do is push it back up and we're good to go. Moving under our awning, we have our Furrion tankless water heater, 12-volt power, propane to heat that water, and we also have our Suburban furnace right here, 12-volt power, propane to heat the furnace. We also have our cable hookup and our outdoor GFCI outlet right there for our outdoor TV. That GFCI is going to be a protected outlet. We'll talk about the main GFCI protection on the inside, but all of your wet locations are going to have that GFCI protected outlet. So in the event that it's not working, we want to go over to that GFCI reset and reset it. Just before our entry door, we're going to notice a tag right here and a hole down on the lower part of our J-wrap. That is to be able to put a crank handle in there for our spare tire to be able to drop it down. A little bit further down on our J-wrap is the hole for the override. You'll see the post sticking out of there for our slide out. Our entry door is going to have some resistance to it whenever we open and close it. That is our friction controlled hinges right here. Keep kids and wind from slamming our door shut or open whenever that happens. So we also have our magnetic latch right there that'll keep our door open. We also have our solid steps here. Solid steps are really easy to operate. Lift them up and we can lock them in. We'll notice some brackets on either side. We want to make sure our entry door is all the way open. That way those brackets don't scratch and tear up our door right there. When we drop them down, we pull that blue lever right there and we drop it down. Now, one thing we need to remember is after we level out our unit, we need to come over here and level our steps. We'll see these silver tabs on each side right here and right here. We push those tabs right there and these legs will come in and out. So kind of have it laid down right here, push those tabs, and you can adjust your legs however needed to level those steps out. We do that for a couple reasons. So we have a good solid threshold right here that is nice and level. That way when we open and close our door, when we close it, it's nice and tight in there. We don't have any gaps. There's no unlevelness to where that door won't shut properly. We also want to do that because we want to make sure there's no contact of the frame of the steps against the bottom frame of the door right here, causing damage there as well. Right at our entry door, we have our control center, all 12-volt powered. We can go to that 12-volt fuse panel if any of this is not working and check to see if the fuses are located there. We have our control center gauges right here that let us know a level of our fresh tank and black tank and gray tanks. Now we also have our battery level here. You'll see that little Bluetooth connect button right there. If we want to download that Compass Connect app, we can monitor and control some of this stuff from that app. We have our ceiling lights, our awning lights, our porch lights, and we also have our tank heaters. Our tank heaters are for those gray and black tanks during the winter time in the underbelly. It gets too cold, we don't want them to freeze, we can kick that tank heater on. And we also have our 12-volt powered water pump. A water pump will pull from the onboard storage on our unit and supply it to our fixtures on the inside. This is an on-demand pump. Whenever we have those faucets running, you'll hear that pump vibrating and running in there. Whenever we turn them off, that pump should turn off within a few seconds after. If you hear that pump continue to run and we're not using any water, either our fresh tank is empty, in which case we need to turn the pump off so it doesn't burn up, or you may have a leak in your system, in which case we need to turn it off and investigate. Down here we have our awning and slide out controls, once again all 12-volt operated. Our rear dinette can come down into a bed. This is a telescopic table right here. We just pull these two latches and we could drop it down, put the cushions over it. When we want it up, unlatch them again, lift them up, latch them back tight. Our couch right here has manual recliners. We pull that cable, they'll kick out. We also have lights and massaging chair and heated. This is all 110 controlled. We have our Furrion double door refrigerator. We'll go over more information on that right now. All right, so here we have our Furrion residential fridge. We have a freezer on this side, fridge on this side, and we have our control center right here. We can see that we have our couple of options. We have fridge, freezer, function, and lock. In order to change into these functions, we need to make sure that lock icon is gone. So we can do that by holding down on the word itself, not the icon. Eventually that will go away. Now we can change the temperature on our fridge and freezer if we wish by pressing once again the words, not the numbers. Now we have a couple of functions on here. The first function is a little umbrella with a sun on it. That is our vacation mode option. That is going to be considered to be off-grid. So it's going to reduce the amount of work that compressor is doing. That way we're not using as much power. Let's say that we're working off of our batteries and we don't want to use as much power, so we want to put that in that vacation mode. This screen will auto lock itself, so if you open it back up and you're messing with it, you may see that lock icon come back on. We just hold that button once again. Our next mode is a little snowflake. That is our super freeze mode. That's going to drop the temperature down more on our freezer and help cool, super freeze whatever we might have put in there, right? Our next one is a little drop with a snowflake on it, and that is going to be our fridge cold mode. So our super cold mode for our fridge slides, same thing. We can activate those both individually or at the same time. We keep clicking them and all of them will go away. Now once everything's gone, that would just be normal operation and we can go ahead and adjust that temperature whatever we want. The other ones are set already for those modes. Now we're also going to have an option on here. If we store our unit, we want to put it in, they call it a low power mode. It's basically turning everything off. If we hold down that lock button once again to unlock it, and we hold down the function for 5 seconds, the system is going to turn off. We'll notice some dashes right here. That shuts your compressor off. That shuts the lights off inside the fridge. That's basically how we turn this system off. So if we're storing our unit, we want to shut it down. We also want to defrost this freezer, get any water out of it, moisture, anything like that. Same thing for our fridge. There's no drain tubes on these, so that water is all it's going to do is leak out. Make sure we put towels on the floor, wipe all of it out because that can cause damage to any wood components around it. So make sure we're maintaining this properly. You're also going to have a little travel knob for your refrigerator to help ensure that your goods don't fall out. Take that, screw that into that hole up top, and you tighten that down while you're in travel to keep those doors from opening. For our entertainment, we have our TV. We also have our satellite hookup, which will pull from the coax cables there in the front. Cable and antenna on the same port here on the top. Antennas on your roof, your cable hookup out in that pass-through bay, but they'll come through the same port. Now with that, when we're using antenna, we want to make sure our antenna boost is on, which is what this little light right here indicates. We can turn it off and on with that switch there. So with antenna boost, it's going to help pick up more channels if we're scanning for channels in that area. If we are scanning for cable, meaning we have that coax hooked up outside at the campsite and to the front, we want to make sure that light is off so it doesn't scramble the channels from the cable. In our kitchen, we have our 110 microwave right here. It does have a hood vent option in there. We can go ahead and kick it on and ventilate air out. You'll notice a vent right on the outside. That vent will have 2 tabs on it. Want to make sure those tabs are open so it'll actually ventilate out. If you want to close them whenever you store your unit so no insects can build nests in there, it's up to you to do that. Below that, we have our Furrion cooktop right here. The glass top is for more counter space. That is also how we need to have it when we travel. When we are using it, we go ahead and flip that up. We have access to our burners. We choose which one we want. Of course, have our propane on, of course. We turn our designated burner to the flame icon and we can manually crank that and light it up. Now, a common issue with our propane, when we pull our unit out of storage, we generally have our propane tanks off, and that will create air in the system eventually. If we changed out our propane tanks because we ran out, that will create air in the system as well. So anytime we're in those 2 scenarios, we want to go ahead and bleed the air out of our system if we're just pulling it out. And we do that by just coming over here and lighting the stove. Have our tanks on, go over here, crank the stove up. It's going to take a little bit of time because you're getting that air out of the system. Once it lights, let it run for about 30 to 60 seconds and you're good to go. I always suggest doing that first time we pull our camper out of storage and stuff, because if we don't, we're going to have air in the system when we go to operate our furnace or our tankless water heater, and you'll get some needless errors there. So bleed that air out first. That'll reduce the risk of that happening. Whenever we do that, we only have to do it that one time. We don't have to do it every time we go and use those items, just when we first pull it out of storage and stuff. We'll notice a little switch here on the right that'll flip and turn these lights blue around the knobs right there. Flip it down, the oven will light up too. We'll also notice whether they're on or off, those rings turn red, letting you know that they're on. Kids like to play with stuff. It's a good notation that that gas system is on so we can turn it off. Our oven down here at the bottom is going to work in somewhat of a similar manner. We're going to turn this knob right here to the flame icon right there, but we have to hold it down. If we're not holding it down, the gas isn't going to emit out of the orifice right there. Then we come over here and manually crank it until that pilot lights. Then we have to hold that pilot down for about 10 to 20 seconds, let that thermocouple warm up, and then we can turn it to our designated temperature and our burner tube should light up. If it doesn't, then we need to go ahead and go back to that pilot light, relight it, let it sit for a second, and then turn it again, see if it'll light up. Now, it will take a little bit of time, even after you bled the air out of the system, for that pilot to light, so be patient for the first time. After you light it that first time, after bleeding the air out of the system, you shouldn't have any more problems with it. Down below our oven, we have our 110 breakers. Our 12-volt fuses are behind here. This is where we want to go in the event that something's not operating and check and see if something's tripped or fuse blown or anything like that. You're also going to have a converter system in here. That's your battery charge system. Anytime we are plugged in, that system is going to be running. You might hear a little fan running in there. That's perfectly fine. That is charging your battery whenever you're plugged in. One more thing about our breaker panel, we'll notice the GFCI is on the breaker here, not on an outlet. See that test button there. If those outlets are tripped, we're going to have to come over here and reset that breaker. They can trip due to over amperage, meaning we have too many blow dryers or heated griddles, stuff like that plugged into those outlets, or because an outlet is wet. If it re-trips on you right away, go unplug some of those items or make sure that the outlets aren't wet and then come try it again. As we enter our hallway, we'll notice we have our RV propane detector right here. A little green light lets you know that it's powered up. We do have a test button on here. We need to check that audible alarm, make sure that it's working. Before we go camping, we also want to know that it is hardwired in our battery system, so it's going to be on all the time. This does have an expiration either printed on the front of it or the back of it, lets you know when it needs to be changed out. We're also going to have a CO and a smoke detector inside our unit too, powered by those 9-volt batteries. We need to test those, change those batteries out whenever necessary as well. We have our Furrion AC and heat system here in the rear. We're going to go ahead and go over the operation of that right now. We'll start with our cool option first. Our cool will cool the air throughout our unit. We of course set our thermostat to whatever point we want it to be, and we have our fan speed options. We have low and high. For low and high, that fan will run all the time. Now whenever we want that fan to cut off, whenever the compressor cuts off, much like we likely do at home, we have it on auto. That system will shut off and on with the compressor. Our next mode is our heat mode. Our heat mode activates our gas-powered furnace on our unit. We choose our set point, and our heater will come on whenever necessary. There is fan speeds on here, but it does not change the fan speed on that furnace. It is a single fan speed on there controlled by the furnace board. Our next mode is our fan mode. Our fan mode simply circulates air throughout our unit without cooling it or anything. This will come out of our rooftop air, and we can just change from high to low to control that fan speed if we wish. That fan will stay on the entire time when we have it in our fan mode. Our last mode is our dry mode. Our dry mode is like a dehumidifier. We can choose our set point and it will cool our unit down to that set point, and it will continue to cool past that, but alternate every 6 to 10 minutes off and on. That way it doesn't drop that temperature too low and freeze you out of the unit, but it still dries the air in your unit. Another thing to note with our furnace is that the air is going to come out of the vents on the floor. It's not going to come out of the rooftop air. Your only rooftop air is going to be your fan and your cool and your dry. Your heat will come out of those floor vents from the furnace. Here you notice your ceiling assembly. Our ceiling assembly has a quick dump vent. If we open it up, air is going to come out of right here. If we close it, air will come out of our ducts in our ceiling right here. So this would just be to cool off just this area fairly quickly. If we want it to run through the ducts and through our entire unit, we go ahead and close that off. We do have a filter on here. We need to clean this regularly, make sure we're not reducing the airflow to our AC, reducing the efficiency there. So make sure you're taking care of that and maintaining it properly. We also have our max air vent for the kitchen. Really easy to operate. 1, 2, 3, 4 for the fan speeds. Fan off, we can open and close our vent right there. Here we are in our bathroom. We got our shower, hot, cold, on, off on our shower head. We also have travel latch on our shower doors. We want to make sure we have that on when we travel so those glass doors don't break. In here, we're also going to have our vent fan up there at the top. When you take a shower, you want to make sure to turn that on, get the humidity out of here and reduce the risk for mold and mildew. Down here we have our toilet. That's going to lead to our black tank. We're only putting 4 things in there, right? Number 1, which is going to be liquids. Number 2, which would be solids. And number 3, it would be RV toilet paper only. And number 4 are chemicals. So let's talk about number 1 and number 2. Number 1 is just liquids, right? We're just going to hit that pedal, flush it down the drain. Number 2, we have solids. When we use it, we need to barely depress that pedal down and fill that bowl about 1/2 to 3/4 away so those solids, toilet paper, all that stuff can flush down. There's enough water to push that stuff all the way down the pipe. Otherwise, you can run into some clogging issues. Besides that, RV toilet paper, chemicals, all that stuff goes through here. And then, of course, we always make sure we have water in that tank. Last thing in here is our Furrion tankless water heater control. Let's talk about that right now. In our bathroom, we'll see our Furrion tankless control center. Pretty simple. We have our power on, off and on, kick it on. That's going to be our set point for our water. We can change that by hitting our up and down buttons right there. Our indicators right here, power, Fahrenheit, Celsius. If we want to change one or the other, we hit that bottom right button. And flame. Flame is only going to kick on whenever we turn that hot water on, indicating that system is working. And once again, on demand, it'll only come on whenever we have that hot water on. Not too much to go over in our bedroom. We do have storage under here. We also have another Furrion thermostat to control this front AC. Once again, we have another filter up here. It needs to be cleaned regularly. And this one is only going to control the cool function in here. The heat is only controlled by that main thermostat in our living room. This one only controls cool and only for this AC. In our closet, we are prepped for a washer dryer system if we want to add that in there. And then here we have our backer location with cable and satellite hookups as well.
Well, we hope you found that resourceful, but wait, there's more information on our Great American RV YouTube channel. This channel right here, find the playlist Hap's Helpful Hacks. We go over different products in this unit and we'll take a deeper dive with more diagnostics, more information, as well as helpful tips when you're out camping. Tell your buddies, tell your friends, like, share, subscribe, do all those awesome things on YouTube, TikTok, wherever you found us, and keep watching here at Great American RV Superstores, where we bring the how-to you.